Have you ever heard of Neil Gaiman? Is a famous author.
I don't think I've heard of him, no.
Okay, I had not heard of him before this either, but apparently he's kind of in the author world. He's kind of like the closest thing they have to a rock star type of personality or whatever.
Okay.
Because he's got like a bunch of um books that were turned into shows or movies, and he's got stuff on Netflix. Like as far as authors go, he's got a lot more going on than most people. But so this publication, Tortoise, they put out this article and a couple podcasts going over some of the evidence. So I'll just give a brief description here and then go and listen to some of the podcast clips. But Neil, and this is what the guy looks like. Um, Neil Gaiman has been accused of sexual assault by two women with whom he was in consensual relationships and is the subject of a police complaint in New Zealand. Gaiman's position is that he strongly denies any allegations of non consensual sex with the women and adds New Zealand police did not take up his offer of assistance over one woman's complaint in 2022, which he says reflects its lack of substance. However, New Zealand police said it made a number of attempts to speak to key people as part of this investigation, and those efforts remain ongoing, adding that there are a number of factors to take into consideration with this case, including location of all parties. The allegations span 2 decades and concern young women who came into contact with Gaiman, the 63-year-old best-selling author of The Sandman, Good Omens, and American Gods, as a nanny to his child and as a fan of his writing. So that just kind of gives you a general idea of what's going on. Oh, and yeah, also just to preface this, people like a reason that a lot of people kind of are annoyed with him and engaged with this story is because this is what he tweeted in 2018. On a day like today, it's worth saying, I believe survivors. Men must not close our eyes and minds to what happens to women in this world. We must fight alongside them for them to be believed at the ballot box and with art and by listening and change this world for the better. So, he says that type of stuff publicly, and then he has these essay allegations. So
Allegation.
that's why people are sort of more engaged than maybe they would be otherwise.
That makes sense. That
But
was tweeted in 2018, it looks like, too, so I'm not sure when the
yeah,
allegations came up. But either way, that's proof that he just says stuff like that and then does the opposite.
if if these allegations are true. But so
Yeah.
this is the first two parts, podcast parts are about Scarlet, in particular, and then the parts 3 and 4 are about another woman. And so this is part here is just when they first kind of meet. The Scarlet, who was hired as a nanny, is going to Gaiman's house for the first time, and seeing what's what there.
And ended up going there that weekend, and she said, "Can you just work for me full time?"
The role being offered to Scarlet is more like that of an au pair than a formal nanny. Scarlet will live with the family and help both parents with childcare, and as it turns out, cooking and cleaning too.
We've got the WhatsApp exchanges from that afternoon of 4th February. From them, we can work out that the first time Scarlet meets Neil Gaiman is just before 2 p.m. at the ferry terminal. Neil Gaiman and the child go on ahead to Waiheke. Scarlet grabs an overnight bag and follows them on a later ferry. From the WhatsApps, we can see Neil Gaiman then arrange to meet Scarlet at his house. At 5 minutes past 2, he writes, it's a 12-minute bus ride and a 5-minute walk over a secret wetland path. Later, he asks, have you got off the bus yet? Scarlet replies, yep, just walking along the wetlands. Beautiful. At 4:26 p.m, Neil Gaiman then messages, brilliant, see you in 5 minutes. So we know that Scarlet arrives at the house at around 4:30 p.m.
When she gets there, there's little babysitting to be done, as the child is dropped off.
So this is the first time she's ever meeting the guy after she's been hired on as a nanny. The first time she's ever been to his house, ever meeting him.
At a pre-arranged
geez.
playdate at one of Amanda's friends nearby. The child's pickup time is left vague, and Scarlet finds herself on her own with...
Yeah, and so then as soon as she gets there, they drop the kid off at another play date. And they're like, yeah, we didn't even really know when we were picking him up. It's kind of open-ended. It's like, that's weird. It's supposed to be my first day on the job as your nanny or whatever, and the kids are going to be gone like basically the whole day. It seems like maybe it would have made more sense to have me come the next day or something.
Yeah, seems a little odd.
Neil Gaiman and confused.
We were alone in his house together. It was fucking awkward, to be honest. He was like on work calls and stuff, and I was like, what
And this is Scarlet talking here, one of the women making the allegations.
the hell am I doing
Okay.
here? This is, I mean, it's like kind of stoked to be getting paid to just read, basically.
After he's finished his work calls, Neil Gaiman suggests they get a pizza, and Scarlet goes to pick it up.
Scarlet WhatsApps Neil Gaiman as she's waiting for the pizza. We know from her message that it's now 7:39 p.m.
3 hours have passed since Scarlet arrived at Neil Gaiman's house.
And then he came and ate outside with me, and I was like, it was quite baffling. It was kind of peculiar, but also flattering because he's famous.
He certainly is. He sold tens of millions of books. He's had a hit show in the West End based on his book, The Ocean at the End of the Lane, and his Sandman comic series is now a Netflix smash.
Yeah, I had no idea he was this big, but 10 million books sold, and he's got a Netflix show. Like, dude, it's a big deal.
We still had like time to kill, apparently. So he said, do you want to take a bath? And I was like, oh yeah, sure. He said, okay, cool, I'll bring you a bath.
And yeah, so this part was really weird to me, especially hearing it the first time, because to me, I don't know how you like casually take a bath at somebody else's place that you're just meeting. You know, maybe if it's your longtime friend, you're like, can I use your shower or maybe your bath? But even with a friend, I feel like it's weird to use their bath. But maybe I'm just not a
Yeah.
bath user. But so this part to
Yeah.
me was like, it seems weird that you wouldn't think there's more to it than this. But she kind of explains that Neil Gaiman's wife was like that. She kind of, the way that she went around the house, she made it seem like this sort of thing maybe was normal and not a crazy thing to happen at that household.
Okay.
And I thought nothing on it. Rachel, I know it sounds crazy, but I truly thought nothing of it. So he runs me a bath. The bath is outside, down at the bottom of the garden, under this, what we call a Pahushikawa tree, which is a big tree with red flowers. And he gives me a towel and says, just, feel free, come out, when you're ready. So I got in and I, was just sort of on my phone.
So Scarlet says Neil Gaiman leaves her to get into the bath alone and tells her to get out whenever she's done. She says he then goes into the house, and when he comes out again, she says he's naked.
And then I hear, like maybe 5 minutes later, clunk, clunk, clunk down to the bath, the stones. And I was like, what the fuck? But also was like, maybe thinking it was normal.
It's now about 9:25 p.m. The sun has set about an hour earlier. Neil Gaiman brings candles with him and puts them around the bath.
And then he got in the bath with me in the most unfazed way, like completely nonchalant, like no issues, just like in the least sexual way possible, basically. That I was just shookest, but like also, is this normal? And I sat down and immediately went like, this with my legs.
Scarlet
That
pulls
doesn't
her
seem
knees
too
up to her
normal.
Yeah, basically. So, I mean, he gets her in the bath or whatever, and then tells her she can get out whenever she wants to. But then 5 minutes later, he goes down to the bath naked and gets in there with her.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
Yeah.
chest and wraps her arms around them. She says she doesn't ask Neil Gaiman anything because she's shocked and bewildered, and that his nonchalance makes her question her own discomfort. Maybe this is normal.
I've seen Amanda naked many times because that's just how she lives her life, basically. And she would walk around the house naked and she would go swimming naked and has a very sort of, liberal attitude towards nudity.
In Neil Gaiman's account, he had invited her to take a bath with him.
At 9:31 p.m, Scarlet sends a text to her friend in Auckland. It says, "I am naked in the bath with Neil. I don't know how this happened. Don't reply, but fuck." And her friend doesn't reply, not until the next day anyway. Remember, he's 61. She's his son's nanny. She says she's not sexually attracted to him.
And then I'll jump forward a little bit more again here too. And this is kind of just a little bit more of the
Quite graphic.
bath story. They get into some other nonsense in the between.
He ended up sort of asking me to put my legs down, and I ignored him. And then he said, "Come."
So she had her legs up, covering her chest after he got into the bath. And then so he's telling her, "Oh, why don't you relax? Put your legs
Come on,
down."
like get comfortable. And again, I was like, I'm good. I'm a bit shy. And then he asked me again and sort of gestured, and so I put them down. And he started sort of caressing my legs.
Scarlet then says that Neil Gaiman tells her to come over to his side of the bath, so that she can see more of the Pohutakawa tree. Silent and scared, she says, she does this. She says she resists more of his touching by pulling forward and sitting up. She puts her phone down on the pebbles by the bath.
It's quite, I don't know, it's sort of hard to talk about on Zoom. Made me next thing I knew, his fingers were in my ass, and I wasn't really sure what was happening, and then
So, I mean, it sounds like he basically just went for it, and there was no pretext or anything like that. And yeah, I mean, to me, it sounds like this guy just more or less felt entitled. It gives the
Mhm.
vibes that he does that sort of thing regularly. Obviously, you can't say just from this, but and I've listened to a little bit more of or whatever, so I've gotten more of a sense of that from him, listening to a bit more of it. But yeah,
he made me give him a hand job, and I said no at first because I'm not interested in that anatomy. And then he said, "You don't know what you're missing out on. Come on, come over here." And then kept pushing it to the point where I was just like, "Fine." And then he just jerked off over me.
Did you jump out of the bath at any point? Or were you
No.
like,
Utterly in a state of complete bewilderment. I wasn't really sure what was happening, and feeling really confused. And he started to say really kind of quite filthy things, and sort of ordering me to call him master.
We understand that Neil Gaiman accepts that what he
That's
that
pretty messed
pun
up.
master comes up more
Yeah.
times. He seems to be into that particularly. Jump ahead again quite a bit here. This is where Scarlet talks to Neil Gaiman's wife, Amanda. This should be good here.
Amanda and Scarlet's friend Misma look after her, but with Neil Gaiman gone, Scarlet feels mentally and physically broken. On the 7th of March, she's in Amanda's kitchen, and she confides in her.
I told her 10 days after he left. I told Amanda. Her words were, and I quote, I said Neil made a pass at me, and she said, I bet he did. Quote.
I
Scarlet-
bet he did.
Yeah, that's what the wife says when Scarlet comes to her and says, he basically, he essayed me, and yeah, I mean, she goes on a
that
little
uses
bit
that
more, I
expression,
think, here
made
about
a
it.
pass at me, to open up a difficult discussion with Amanda Palmer. Scarlet says she told Amanda everything that night. They stay up until 2 a.m, talking. As it's too late for Scarlet to go home, she stays over. She says she could hear Amanda pacing around on the floor upstairs all night. Amanda, remember, wasn't just Neil Gaiman.
So, and that to me, it seems like the wife is like, oh no, is this all coming to a head? Like she's seen this sort of things before. She knows that it is bad if it comes out. And so now that Scarlett's kind of made it seem like maybe she wants to come out, she's freaking out. She's like, oh, this is not going to go well. And I'm just going off of my impressions here. There's nothing hard that says this, but that's how it comes across to me.
Mm-hmm.
Wife. She's the person who hired Scarlet. She's an idol to her young female fans like Scarlet, and Amanda is very outspoken on violence.
Yeah, and Amanda is famous in her own right. She's a performer of sorts. I don't know exactly, but she also has her own following, and I think people also herald her as sort of feminist icon of sorts as well.
Against women and girls.
This is what now upsets me to my core, is like when I told her, and she was so like almost that she'd known, she said I was the 14th fucking woman that had gone to her.
14th woman.
It's a lot of women. I mean, yeah, he obviously thinks he can just do what he wants, and maybe in his twisted mind, him inviting her into the bath was an invitation for him to do that, which is not how that works. But in his mind,
Yeah,
maybe
well, I
that's
mean,
what he
and to be
thought.
fair, he also claims that that's how he poised it. According to him, he said, "Do you want to take a bath together or whatever, something along those lines." So that aspect of it is kind of he said, she said. But this part, going ahead a little bit again, there's another part that makes this kind of way worse.
as first witnesses.
Neil had left. He had gone overseas and he had taken a child with him, but Amanda was still in New Zealand and she was still living in Neil's house. So I said to her, well, maybe, you really need to leave that place. What kinds of resources do you have to be able to do that? And then she told me that they had not paid her. I remember just about falling off my chair at how extraordinarily clear the exploitation was in that moment.
So by the 13th of March, a month and a half after she moved to Waiheke, Scarlet hasn't even been paid properly. Neil Gaiman...
Jesus.
Yeah, so what is she supposed to do? She hasn't even been paid this whole time. She's like stranded there, essentially. And that is where it starts to come across as more insidious, in my opinion.
Yeah, 100%.
And then, so this part is not proof here, but to me, the fact that she's talking to her friends and saying these things at the time, so, she comes back and we can go back and look at the text, and she was saying this sorts of things to her friends. Again, it's not proof, but it corroborates the story.
Mm-hmm.
She's writing off the back of what she's heard from Scarlet.
Sorry, this is Scarlet's friend texting Amanda about the stuff that
It
she's
strikes me that perhaps you
telling
haven't
her.
grasped the severity of the situation. Yes, Scarlet did confide in us, and so we know that the first time he had anal sex, it was so violent that she lost consciousness from the pain. That her description of watching the sex happen to her from outside of her body is congruent with accounts of rape survivors. We know that he is 40 years older than her, and that she was employed as his and your nanny at the time. We know that you knew exactly what kind of person Neil is when you put Scarlet into his house. I consider Scarlet, among many other more positive attributes, to be one of the most vulnerable people I have ever met. I know the thing she most desperately wants is to feel included and loved, to be part of a family, that she would do anything, take any amount of shit in order to not be rejected. Chris and I are both so worried about Scarlet, who will spend years coming to terms with this experience, and we are also deeply concerned about the likelihood of this happening to other women. Eventually, this is all going to come out.
So, again, not proof, but it's other people saying that she was saying this to them at the time, at the very least. But then towards the end of this first episode, they kind of cast doubt on the evidence, basically, that they've been going over on their own podcast.
How are you? I miss you so much, as I said in my text. I hope that you're doing all
This is a voice memo that Scarlet sent to Neil.
right.
Okay.
No, I worry. I am doing better today. I've been terrible.
There are files of photos and videos
Hopefully one day soon.
and pages of messages.
And I'm sending you all my love.
It's the messages from Scarlet to Neil Gaiman that bring us up short. There are a lot of messages like this, and they're even more shocking, if anything.
So basically, he's just saying there's a lot of messages from Scarlet to Neil that make it sound like things weren't going so bad, And this is from the Tortoise people who put this article out in the podcast, making the allegations. And so then we'll just jump to episode 2.